Hey guys, another video for our Myths About Japan playlist, although it actually might apply to other countries as well, as you might see. So first of all, I just want to say I know this topic's an emotional topic for lots of people and that it might result in all sorts of disagreements between people and people disagreeing with what I'm going to say. That's all fine, providing that there's no insults or abuse in the comments. So if you want to leave your comments and you want to disagree with me or disagree with other people, that's fine, but no insults or abuse. We try and keep it fairly civilized on this channel. That's also the YouTube terms of service, that abuse and insults are not allowed. So it's just polite discourse, isn't it? So what triggered this was we had the McDonald's video talking about the people mass buying the Happy Meals and throwing away the food and keeping the cards, and we had a number of people saying that they were all Chinese and Korean people. And again, the way a lot of people said that, there was one Japanese guy who was quite rude. You know, you don't do enough research, you need to do more research. He actually said it was all foreigners. It was all foreigners that did that, and foreigners caused most of the problems in Japan, he said. We've had those sort of comments before. And perhaps throughout time, since humans started to gather in groups, perhaps people have blamed other people for anything that went wrong, right? We're having thunderstorms because the other people don't pray to the right God, or we're having problems because those people, you know, and it's throughout time, right? And then you've had all sorts of leaders who've been really good at taking advantage of that, you know. Hitler, for example, you know, the likes of Hitler that have straight out blamed those people over there responsible for our problems, and we see comments like that on our videos all the time, you know, often. And over the years, we've addressed them in our Myths playlist. We've talked about, you know, one of the most common ones is crime. Whenever anybody talks about crime in Japan, a lot of Japanese people, and also a lot of people who aren't Japanese but who have, you know, idealistic ideas of what Japan is, and this is the reason for this video, or people who've read that it's the foreigners that are doing all the crime. And this is the purpose of this video. There are a lot of people that will watch this video who will maintain that it's all foreigners, and they'll keep that opinion forever, right? That's fine. This video is for the more moderate people, and it's a heads up warning that what you read and what you see is often not true. And the crime one's a good example of that, you know, that any time anybody talks about crime in Japan, there's a whole bunch of people who say it's the foreigners that are doing the crime, it's the foreigners. Some of you might have seen the video we did on the Myths playlist where we got the Japanese National Police statistics, and quite clearly, you can look them up for yourself, quite clearly it's not foreigners committing all the crime in Japan. There were some people that debated whether proportionately it was more or less. My understanding of the statistics was proportionately it was less. That proportionately foreigners commit less of the crime proportionately, you know, per capita, per number of foreigners than Japanese people, which means there's, you know, if you haven't seen that video, check it out. I'm not going to do all that again. But either way, the myth was foreigners commit all the crime in Japan. That's not true. And it's like this, it's like saying that all the people that were doing that McDonald's thing were all Chinese and Vietnamese, which was what a couple of people said. I'm not going to believe that for a minute. I'm not going to believe that everybody there doing that was Chinese and Vietnamese. It may well be the case that some were. It may well be the case that there were people there from all different countries that were doing that. But I will not believe for a moment there was no Japanese in that group and it was all foreigners. And they're the myths. They're the myths that we get all the time. It's all foreigners committing the crimes. Not true. You can look up the statistics for yourself. As far as the McDonald's thing, they've been saying, oh, it's been reported. It's been reported. Yeah, that's right. You know, there's no doubt that what happens is with these myths is they get repeated and repeated. Those of you who haven't seen our myths playlist, have a look at it for yourself. What happens is, on the internet, people will say stuff, and then the mainstream media picks it up and reports it. It's been reported that, it's been said that, and then it gets reported like it's fact, and then people believe it because they see it on BBC or they see it on some supposedly reputable news organisation, and then they believe it, you know. And oh, it's, you know, foreigners commit all the crime in Japan. The other one we had was that we showed you Bosozoku, you know, the noisy guys on the motorbikes, And the same thing, oh, they're mostly Chinese, they're mostly Chinese. No, they're not. Right. We've got a lot of Bosniaks in this area, surprisingly, for a small country town. And one of the places that one of my buddies here likes to go to have a drink now and again, we'll go and have a quiet gin and tonic sometimes. And a couple of the guys that are regulars in there are Bosniaks, a couple of young guys, incredibly young, they look about 15. But they turn up on their bikes with their helmets hanging off the back of their heads and blah, 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 and come in and sit down 100% Japanese. And they'll actually come in with their family. One of them comes in with his father, some now and again, who's a bit of a wild character too. Japanese, they're not Chinese, right? And so, you know, so these things are constantly reported like it's the foreigners doing all that. It's the foreigners that are the problem. It's the foreigners that are the problem. And, you know, I think there's a natural thing in all of us that wants to believe that our group is the good group and that our group wouldn't do that. It must be those guys. And I think that's why that stuff works when Hitler or Trump or anybody else says that, it's the foreigners doing all that. People want to believe it. You know, they want to believe it, that it's not our group's really good. It's those guys that are doing it, right? And it's sort of a natural thing. And then the same thing, if you've got an idealistic view of what Japan is and Japanese society and Japanese people, and you know, you want to believe that it's not the Japanese people doing it, it's the foreigners doing it. But having lived amongst the Japanese people for a couple of decades, I can tell you there are some people in this society who do really bad behaviour, you know, and you know, I've showed you lots of examples of that over the years. Every society, there's no society that's perfect. Every society has a percentage of people that do bad behaviour. And to say that it's not the Japanese people wouldn't do that is just fantasy. You know, it's just, you're kidding yourself. There's no group of people in the world that's perfect, right? And of course there are foreign people in Japan doing the wrong thing. I'm not going to say it unless I'm confident it's true. I'll tell you one that's true. Is this week there was a couple of Vietnamese guys caught bringing in 1 metric ton of cannabis, right? Which must have been a shipping container or something to bring in a ton. And they sort of showed it, and you could see that it had been boxed up. So they'd obviously boxed it up to make it look like something else, but it must have stank. So two Vietnamese people. Now I'm happy to report that, because obviously the police can confirm these guys are Vietnamese. No doubt there's a paper trail and there's passports and there's citizenship and there's all sorts of stuff, so they can report it. Now, I'm confident that's true, so I'm confident to report it to you. But what we're not going to do in any of our videos is report stuff to you because someone said it, right? Someone on the internet said that it was all foreigners, and so we should say that too. You know, there's a couple of people got very emotional. No doubt, same people are right at this moment leaving aggressive comments in the comment section. Hopefully they're not too abusive, so that you'll get to read them. But you know, if they want to believe it, that's fine. Whatever people want to believe, that's fine. But what I take exception to, and what I'm sort of disappointed in, is when people are abusive, that we don't repeat this stuff that we hear. And I'm just not going to repeat it if I doubt its truth, right? And to say that all the people in that McDonald's buying those Happy Meals, bulk buying those Happy Meals to get those Pokemon cards, were all Chinese and Vietnamese, I don't believe that for a second. So I'm certainly not going to report that. You know, there may well have been Chinese and Vietnamese people there. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. But to say they're all Chinese, Vietnamese, don't believe that for a second. To say that all crimes committed by foreigners, don't believe that for a second. To say that all Bolsosoku are Chinese or Koreans or whatever they say. Never come across any that weren't Japanese. We do come across them, the ones that go to that place where we drink. There's other ones that often at the convenience store will pull up and there'll be like 10 of them all in there, and they're all nattering away to each other in Japanese. They're not talking Chinese or Vietnamese. They're Japanese dudes. Clearly Japanese dudes, you know. So the reason for this video is just a heads up to the reasonable people. You know, we know there's a lot of open-minded people, intelligent, open-minded people who watch these videos and leave intelligent, open-minded comments. This is for those people. Just be aware that the stuff we get repeated, if you haven't seen the Myths About Japan playlist yet, check it out, because it's full of these. You know, all those, sometimes these ones are sort of fairly serious, you know, but there's other ones that are less serious. You know, the one with the tree, those of you who haven't seen it, there was a big tree in a Tokyo park and they wanted to put a new pathway through, and there was this big beautiful tree. So what they did is they put a ball underneath it, sort of picked it up and moved it over and replanted it again, right? And that got reported by, or written up by someone on the internet that in Japan, if they're building a road, they move all the trees, right? And then the mainstream media picked it up, and then everybody seemed to report that this is what happens in Japan. And then, because people want to believe that, right? These myths, people want to believe them, and so underneath there's all these comments, people saying, "Isn't it wonderful? Isn't Japan a wonderful place? We should all be that wonderful," right? And it was just one tree in one park. It wasn't in the middle of a highway. It was one tree in one park in Tokyo, and still that still pops up on the internet, because what happens is people that want clicks keep repeating that stuff, you know. So you know, there's a lot of stuff like that comes up, and it's so widely reported that sort of gives it credibility to some people, because they keep hearing it from lots of different sources. They believe it. And that Myths About Japan playlist, if I think about it, I'll put a link under this video, because it's full of them, and it proves this point, that just because something's widely reported and widely repeated doesn't mean it's true. You know, that we've got to be careful what we believe unless we know it's true. And there's been so many over the years, that whole playlist and more, that I hear that, oh, there's that one again, and it's just nonsense. So with our videos, what we do is only what we are confident is true that we'll report to you, and then this other stuff we've just learned to be too cautious. And that what do you call that xenophobia based stuff, where it's always blaming the foreigners for everything. It's sort of like an automatic reaction. I get it all the time. There's a lot of Japanese people that do it in Japanese. They watch our video using Google Translate, I guess, and then they'll leave a comment in Japanese underneath saying it's the foreigners, it's the foreigners. I mean, even those crazy drivers videos showing people driving badly. It's the foreigners doing it, it's the foreigners doing it, you know? And that's sort of around the world at the moment, that's becoming more widespread, isn't it? Blaming the foreigners for all your problems, you know? And no doubt, you know, like our two Vietnamese friends and their ton of marijuana, no doubt there is some bad stuff being done by people who are not indigenous to the country they're living in. But you know, we have to be careful what we believe, don't we? You know, so this is for those people that are willing to have a close look at the information they're getting. And it seems to be a dying art. It does seem to be that the BS on the internet seems to be what gets believed, and people don't seem to be able to look at it logically and reasonably, you know. That we all have our biases, I guess, don't we? You know. So anyway, I can't help laughing about the guys with their ton of marijuana. I mean, how would they think they're going to get away with that? A ton. Anyway, they'll have a long time in jail to think about that mistake. So anyway, that's more than enough of that. So yeah, the myth is all the bad stuff in Japan is done by foreigners. It's obviously not true. It's not true. But believe it if you want to. Everyone's entitled to believe whatever they want. Believe it if you want to. More videos coming soon.